Today is Tuesday, December 28th. This morning, as I was lifting up the community to the Lord, He showed me a vision. What I saw was, it was a small pumpkin in the hands of someone, and it fit right in the palm of their hand. And I believe it some sort of like harvest, but the person that had it in their hand took the lid off and hollowed out a small space within the gourd. And the next thing that happened was I saw inside of this pumpkin. No, that's not what happened next. What happened next is the person whose hand was opening it, he actually took out two things. First, he took out a small white rock that looked as if it was an unpolished diamond, that it was not, it just wasn't made into a diamond. It just was the rock sort of before that takes place. And he said that almost aside, like discarding it. And then the second thing he took out was a pumpkin seed that was flat and it had no seed inside of it. So he also discarded that. And then I could see inside. Then he had hollowed out this space, just a small space inside this pumpkin. And then a man was in there. He went in there and he found the hollow space and he kind of just laid there and was comfortable. And this was a man that, he looked like a white man, but he was wearing native clothes. Anyway, and so he began to kind of rest in the hollowed out part, just comfortably with his hands kind of back behind his head, sleeping. And at this time, I'm not sure he was supposed to be sleeping, but at this time, excuse me, as he is sleeping, I see the person who had originally taken out those seeds, those pieces. I saw that he kind of threw them onto the table that this pumpkin was now sitting on. And it had all like, you know, when you have a pumpkin, it comes with all the gooey residue that it kind of held in the seed in the first place. And so that little chunk kind of flew onto the table. And then I saw the seeds kind of separating themselves from the goo. And they kind of came out and they kind of moved themselves towards the edge of this table. And at the edge of this table, you could see that there was a window open in this place. And you can see the sun shining brightly and huge above anything else that was out there. And so these seeds, they sprouted to these small seedlings or saplings. I'm not sure what they're called. And they didn't get very high. They may have gotten maybe 5 inches. Anyway, and once they were that size, they took flight and they left. And I expected to see them go and plant themselves, but they did not do that. They just flew out towards the sun. And at this point, the man who was sleeping woke up from his slumber and kind of, you could see his countenance was almost maybe disheartened, but when he chose to wake up from his slumber, he did change. He did change from a man who was, in foreign clothes to him, because they were Native American, like Indian, but they were not clothes that he would have worn. But those clothes did change, and he was in white. And it reminded me of like Greece, Roman times clothes. Like a gold belt with a white outfit, like a gold thing in your hair type of person. Anyway, and he kind of is the size of this pumpkin, so he kind of like lifts himself up a little bit to the outside of it. And he looks and sees them the seeds flying off in the distance, and he is remorseful and brokenhearted and actually starts to cry about it. But after this, after he mourns that, he has a hoe in his hand and he begins to rake out the rest of these seeds. And he cleans out this pumpkin completely, and he takes all the seeds and he climbs out and he lays them on the table. And then he begins to himself, weed these seeds out from the, so he begins to clean them, and he takes all the, the goo and all the stuff off of the seeds, and he dries them, and he actually places them sort of in a row towards the front of the table, towards the sun. And he has them all dried out in lines and everything, just all prepared and ready. And I think even before when he had the big ball of seeds with like the goo on it, he showed affection towards it, like held it in his arms, almost hugging it, and he held it very affectionately. Then he began to clean it and then laid it all out and got it all ready. And then after it was just laying there all ready, it began to actually grow. And these seeds weren't planted in anything and in soil or anything, but it began to grow. And it grew up much bigger than the ones before. And you could see that he was much more at peace and much more thankful and grateful. And he kind of walked through them and would hold their leaves. And he was a caretaker of them. He took really, really good care of these plants. And then at this point, he kind of walked through them almost like a corn stalk, like you walk through a corn field. And he made his way to the front to where the window was open and towards the sun, and he kind of looked out towards the sun, and he just was smiling, just thankful at the sun and towards that way. And then at that point, his flesh was taken away and just fallen off, and he became a spirit man. And that was the end of the vision.